Welcome to Aquarium 911, where I help you with your aquarium problems. Today, we have someone who has been struggling after picking up a Fluval Flex 32 gallon and seeing some issues with the plants. We're going to kind of dive in and diagnose some of the problems that are coming here, figure out where we can make some changes to find long-term success. Today's email comes from Carolyn. Hello, Bentley. I've been a fan of for a bit now and was thrilled when I saw you starting the Tank 911 series because I've been looking for this kind of help for months. Until maybe 3 weeks ago when I turned to ChatGPT for help and have been stuck in a tank dilemma. AI is not the best at solving complex problems. I will put this out there. I've played with AI a little bit when it comes to asking aquarium-related issues, and often it has given me very bad information. I can see where you're having some trouble. Went to ChatGPT hoping to find some help, and then it probably steered you even further down the wrong path. That's why we're here. I have these 3 tanks. I'm not new to fish keeping, but new to freshwater plants. Only about 18 months in. And while I really have questions for all 3, I think they're all probably tied to water nutrients and fertilizer issues. But one in particular has been the subject of much frustration. It's my 32.5 gallon Fluval Flex. All 3 tanks are flexes, but the other 2 are the 9 gallon and 15. So you have like all 3 sizes, which I think is kind of cool because it lets you get an experience for each tank and where you could potentially like find that this is the best tank for the role in each case, right? And I think that's kind of cool. I've been wanting a bigger tank, and about a year ago I got a marketplace notification that one was available in a nearby town, and I picked it up. The owner said that it was only established a few months before he had decided to sell it. It was fish-free and filled with live plants. He said they were fertilized with about 6 pumps daily of Dustin's grow juice. That's a lot of fertilizer. Was he using CO2 or something? Like, that seems like a ton. I mean, these plants were luscious and happy, and he graciously gave me the bottle to continue with it. I mean, that being said, like, if you don't have any fish, you can kind of over-fertilize, and then the plants can just, like, go hog wild. That seems like a lot if you're going to keep fish. Fast forward, in November, I started noticing issues. I have to admit, after I got it, I scaled back on the Dustin's grow juice, and probably was doing only 3 pumps 1 to 2 times a week because 6 seemed excessive. Plus, my tank had fish in it. Everything seemed okay until January or February, until I started noticing fuzz algae and a bit of hair algae and things not looking very green anymore. Since then, I have backed off on the light intensity and went from water changes every 2 weeks to weekly. I got in the habit of fertilizing every other day, 3 pumps plus Flourish potassium every 2 weeks. So the potassium's every 2 weeks, but you're doing 3 pumps every other day. I'm thinking that's what we're talking about here. And root tabs under the sword monthly. I think root tabs is good. I let that ride until May. Things still just didn't seem like they were improving. Maybe the algae slowed some, but plants still look not so great. End of May, I began fertilizing daily with 3 pumps of the grow juice and really working on trimming out the old leaves and algae. And mid-June, out of desperation and analysis paralysis, months of watching a ton of YouTube videos and studying plant deficiency charts, I turned to ChatGPT. Desperate, I know. I have started to see some positive changes from what it recommended, but I know intuitively we're not there yet. What you see in the below list will reflect the current protocol ChatGPT has helped me with since June 14th. Specs: temps at 77 degrees, weekly water changes approximately 30%. Substrate Fluval stratum topped with Carob C Eco Complete. Equipment: standard pump that comes with the Fluval Flex, but baffled with an Etsy spray bar. Okay, so we're trying to distribute the spray. That's good. I honestly like some of those Etsy upgrades. They're great. Filtered with ceramic media and sponges in both compartments. No CO2. Lighting. There's some screenshots down below with the Fluval Aqua Sky, and I have them open, so let me bounce over to that real fast. We're doing just an auto mode, and we're maxing out at 49% red, 53% green, 8% blue, 57% white. And keep in mind, this is the Aqua Sky because it's a Fluval Flex 32 gallon. They come with the Aqua Sky. Yeah, I think that's like a decent setting. I might almost make some small adjustments. This is going to be based on things that we'll look in the pictures here, but we'll come back to that in a second. We'll keep going through the email, and we'll see some of the pictures and give you guys an idea of what's going on, and then the plan of action that I would take. Fish: 10 Harlequin Rasboras, 10 Neons, 6 Venezuelan Coryars, 1 Autostingless, 3 Honey Gouramis, and 4 Jelly Bean Tetras. Wanting to get the Jelly Bean school up to at least 8 to 10 eventually. I really like your fish list. It is like quintessential tropical aquarium, but it's a nice mix for different reasons. So I appreciate it. The only thing I would actually suggest is more autosynclus. They're just really good. You might almost look at a few other things, but we'll dive into that as we get closer in and looking at some of those pictures, okay? Plants. Swords, Java Fern, Anubias, Cryptocoryne, type unknown as it came with the tank, a little Boos, minuscule and struggling, red tiger lotus, Pocostemon, octopus, Rotala indica, and Laganendra bleeding heart. That's a very cool plant, the bleeding heart. I like that one. All have been in there a long time, except the Rotala indica and the Laganendra were purchased on June 8th, along with Ludwigia red, which completely died and melted within 2 weeks, despite being submersed type. So it was grown submersed. Interesting. Fertilization schedule. 3 pumps daily of grow juice. Flourish potassium 4 milliliters twice a week. Aquarium Co-op root tabs under the sword monthly. Algae. Under better control, but still having a bit of algae here and there. And fuzz, I think it's just still from before. I just need to continue to prune out the rest of the affected leaves, and we'll really know if that's, in fact, an old algae bloom or if it's something continual. Water chemistry. I use Aquarium Co-op test strips weekly, and now use the master test kit from API weekly to do nitrate as of late. I do have other tests, API phosphates, flugel calcium, API GH and KH, that I have used. While I don't test them regularly, I have done so to give you an idea of where we're at. Note the wildly different results in GH and KH. Yeah, it can happen. But I will say, GH and KH, I found that the co-op test strips do a pretty good job. It might not be as bang on as like the liquid test kit, but it's good enough to get you the baseline of where you are. The thing that we need about testing is to understand where things are out of whack, or get us an understanding of what the baseline of your water is like. So it should be fine. Nitrates range from 5 to 40 ppm, seems to vary some. GH on Aquarium Co-op test strip says 300 plus ppm. API 10 degrees at 179 degrees hardness. Sorry, you have DKH. Sorry. KH, Aquarium Co-op test strip say 180 ppm. API says 5 or 89.5. pH is 7.6. Phosphate 0, silicates 2 to 3 if I did the test correctly. There are a number of algae that actually really do well if your silicate levels are even remotely elevated in your tank. I'm not saying that this is our culprit, but I'm just letting you know this tends to be most common with brown algae. If you have high silicates, brown algae goes crazy, or diatom. But you're not dealing typically with diatom here from what you've been describing, and I've briefly glanced at your pictures, so I wouldn't stress about the silicates too much right now. Flugel calcium, either I did the testing correctly, I don't think I did, but it says solution should turn pink right away, and then you have to add drips until it turns violet. It never even started out pink, so I don't know what to think about that. Well, so your general hardness is both calcium and magnesium in the water. So it's a combination of the two. So we can kind of extrapolate that you have a reasonable amount of calcium based on your general hardness testing between API and Aquarium Co-op. So I wouldn't stress too much about an individual calcium test. I would just use GH because you really do need both calcium and magnesium, and that's what that is testing for you. Don't stress about that, okay? Photos are here in a nice handy folder. I won't go into the depth of my other tanks, but they are looking good-ish, better than this one. And even better since ChatGPT got involved. So GPT actually helped. I would really love to see like the full-on like instructions ChatGPT gave you, just like the output itself. I'm very curious, just from a technological perspective, of how well it addressed your questions, and whether or not it would be similar information to what I would recommend personally based on my experience. If that does interest you, to help figure out what's going on this tank, I'm happy to share pics of that as well. So if I'd have just read one more sentence, everybody watching along, I wouldn't have needed that diatribe of like, I'm really curious to see what the output is. But I am curious. They don't use Justin's grow juice, and as of recently, Aquarium Co-op Easy Green. A little variation in lighting of plants, but I'll leave it to you unless you want to do more. Thanks again for reading this novel of a situation. I couldn't be happier that you're doing this series, and hope you can help me out. Well, first, let me apologize for how long it's taking to get back to you. I know that you emailed me a while ago, and your follow-up email, which we're about to get into, was in August. This should tell you folks kind of how far behind I am, or just how many of these requests I've gotten. I do plan to help everyone I possibly can, and we're trying to make some changes to help more, but I am a little behind. I'm so sorry. Okay, hello again. Just checking in with an update as the time comes to look at my case. I was able to find out that the recent city water test shows calcium to magnesium ratio of 30 milligrams, or I'm assuming that's micrograms, not milligrams, but mg per liter, and calcium to 18 mg per liter. calcium and 18 mg per liter of magnesium. So if you were to think about your GH that you're testing, then roughly 60% of that number is just calcium. And the rest is your magnesium. It's more like 65-ish. It's close to 2/3. It's just a shy under, but let's just say 60 to be easy. So that'll let you know you have a reasonable amount of calcium in the water. So don't stress there. Also, the issues continue to worsen. With the protocol I outlined below, I would see new growth, but a week or two later, the sides of the plants start decaying. Everything looks brown and yellow. Swords are looking atrocious. The tips break down, turn dark brown and yellow, and then just die off. And while the green ones look furry, about a month ago I switched to Easy Green because that is what I was using successfully in my 9 and 15 gallon flexes at 3 milliliters weekly instead of the Dustin's Grow Juice. Okay, so we're doing a bigger change, and I don't know the analysis of Dustin's Grow Juice compared to Aquarium Co-op makes that completely out in the open so that you know it. So it's a little harder to do the mental math there, but basically you're doing that 3 milligram or that 3 pumps, which put it 3 pumps because that's each pump is 1, right? Milliliter. You're doing basically they're recommended for low light, and so we might see some interesting things. My nitrates are steady now with this fert at 20 to 25 ppm. Okay, so we have good nitrates. That's good. Despite that, I'm also noticing the green fuzz on older leaves despite the lighting schedule. I had thought algae was improving, but now I don't think so. When the time comes and you take my case, I probably need to send new pictures. It looks quite different now. I'm about ready to go to plastic plants. What's really confusing is my 9 gallon, 15 gallon have plants, albeit different lights, stocking, etc., and things look so much better in those tanks. I do have some green dot algae and some weird green hairs stuck to the glass sporadically in the 15 and some brown diatom in the 9, but I suspect it's because it's a betta tank and I try to keep the water flow down, some that make his life easier. But the plants looked much healthier in those, so I don't know why I can't get this tank figured out. Just wanted to update you with some more recent information. I watched every single episode of Aquarium 91. Each one I learned a little more, and I'm not always sure if everything will help me, but they make me think. Let's just say I have bought a few of the other plant nutrients you mentioned in those, and I'm just unsure where to start and where we moved. Okay, so let me dodge over to pictures real fast, and that will help us kind of diagnose some things. So, one, you have the white flex, which when I look at it sometimes at the right angle, it looks like a rimless tank to me. At your first picture, I was confused. I was like, I thought you said you had a flex. Then I realized it was the white background because I didn't see the background very well. I was also very tired. I looked at this kind of late at night. It's the next day, so... We're definitely having some issues with brownie tips, and you said you've kind of gone through some analysis paralysis. One thing we might look at doing is making an adjustment to our fertilization schedule. I know you're doing this with no CO2, and we don't necessarily need CO2, but there's something we should talk about. Okay, so I'm kind of looking, I see some spot algae on a lot of leaves and stuff like that, and usually... And we've got some leaves really showing some kind of interesting nitrogen, what I would normally associate as a nitrogen deficiency, but can be some other things, despite the fact that you're typically sitting at 20 ppm or so now. I would see your lighting. So I think you have sufficient lighting. I don't think we're at too low of light, but I would ask if you're thinking about the plants in your other tanks, the 9 and the 15, and the relative just to your own eyes, because we're comparing different lighting modules, right? Whatever product is doing the light itself. So it's hard to compare power values. But if you were just look at it, would you say that the other tanks are brighter, a similar level of brightness, or dimmer? And we might try to make some small adjustments to the lighting to account to be closer to those. Because if we can get them all kind of at a similar level, it might help us more easily kind of go, okay, well, all these look like they're about the same brightness. And I understand that there are going to be people that are going to lose their mind in the comments and be like, you can't judge how bright a tank is based on how it looks, Bentley. You gotta do it with the da-da-da-da. Yes, you can. I can tell you that this tank is nowhere near as bright as this tank or this tank, depending on XYZ setting, and I can visually see that. Now, granted, are you understanding the exact par value? No. Okay, but you can tell that, hey, this tank is a little more bright than that tank over there just by visually looking at them. And if one tank that is less bright is struggling, and the tank that's a little brighter is not, guess what we might want to consider? A little extra light in the dimmer tank. So, Carolyn, compare those tanks just visually and try to look at them and try to just dial up or dial down, depending on the tanks that are having more success, the light levels in your 32 gallon. And just do small adjustments, like maybe 5% at a time. Tiny, leave them like that for a couple weeks, see if that helps, and then let's talk about the other adjustments, because I think these are the big ones. I really want to change, so you're talking about doing weekly dosing of nutrients, and you're seeing pretty consistent levels, but one thing that you also have is, based on your testing, you have a relative amount of hardness in your water. And one thing that happens for those of you that have hard water, and I didn't really directly say this in a previous video, and I apologize for that. Someone mentioned this in a comment, and I was like, man, I was trying to say that, but I didn't say it directly, and I'm a dummy. In harder water, it is more difficult for our stem plants and epiphyte plants and the things that absorb nutrients from the water to pull those nutrients in from the water column. It is easier for those plants to pull them in from the roots. So what are we going to do? I would argue one thing we might try doing, because you have a little bit harder water, is part of how we're going to change our fertilizer regime here and make some adjustments is we are going to add root tabs through the rest of the tank and not for just the sword, because that'll add excess nutrients to all the other plants at their roots. And this might help us start cracking the code on why we're seeing some of those nutrient deficiencies, with the leaves dying off, especially the tips, and going brown, stuff like that. So you have been dosing potassium. Here's what we might do, and stick with me, because a lot of the things that you're showing, like the way that the leaves are dying, are either typically a nitrogen or potassium deficiency. Here's what I think we might want to do. You're dosing potassium every other week, I think. Let's try dosing an even smaller amount, either once a week or every 3 days. You could look at getting Aquarium Co-op's Easy Potassium as a replacement, because it is designed to be dosed a little more frequently, and it's a simple pump. It's just like all the other Easy products, right? It's X pumps per 10 gallons, easy peasy. Corey really has done a phenomenal job of making sure that his products have that ease, and I wish more companies would do the exact same thing, because it's just such an easy mental thing to be like, my tank is 40 gallons, I put 4 pumps in. Right? It's 1 pump per 10 gallons or 1 pump per 5 gallons, whatever it would be, to make it just super easy. And I wish more companies would do this. So that's the one thing that Corey does phenomenally well. Let me get off my tangent. I'm sorry. So here's what I want to do. I want to split our fertilizer up. You talked about how you were doing the Dustin's Grow Juice daily, and you were seeing some progress. But we switched to Easy Green, and we kind of made some changes. So one of the things I want to try is I want to up your amount of nutrients you're doing just a little bit. And the way that we're doing that is through root tabs, right? So I want to include root tabs for all the rest of the plants, and you can just kind of intersperse them in the soil, and that'll help put some nutrition in the soil a little extra and help those plants absorb that. You don't have to do anything crazy under every stem or under each individual plant. The sword, give it a specific one, but then just kind of space them out every couple of inches in your soil. Maybe drop a root tab. Maybe you go the 32 flexes X wide. Maybe you have it 6 across root tab wise and 2 back. And that will just spread a nice even distribution. And I know that sounds like a lot of root tabs, but we can still do this only once a month. And I think you're going to be okay. But what we want to try and do is, because that harder water makes it harder to bring in some of those nutrients from the water column, we want to help supplement at the roots. And this is the easiest way to do it. If you're dosing the 3 milliliters a week, I want you to do 1 pump or the 1 milliliter every other day. So and you could set this on a weekly schedule if you really wanted to where it's okay, I do that. That means I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then maybe you take a 2-day gap, or you could literally do it every other day. And then right before you feed your fish or right after you feed your fish, 1 milliliter. This is one thing I've noticed with a lot of people who are dealing with algae is they typically dose once or twice a week, and you have this kind of big spike, and it slowly tails off. And that lets algae kind of feed on the excess. And what I want to do is have a more consistent, leaner level, right? And this should, realistically, long-term, keep us in the same place. But one thing we need to add in there, and one way that we could probably fix that potassium issue, is I would start adding a little bit of either Flourish Trace or Brightwell's Florin Multi. If you're doing the Florin Multi, let me get my Florin Multi. Okay, so Florin Multi is all your micros plus potassium. And this could be an easy way to deal with some of that. You don't have a super heavy stock when it comes to the number of fish, so you can't go like sans nitrogen entirely. I mean, you could try it, but it looks like you're having some issues where you need a little nitrogen, but the root tabs might be enough. So we could play some interesting experiments, but here's where we want to start. Let's not go too crazy. I want to add in either Florin Multi or Flourish Trace. If you're using Flourish Trace, dose it exactly to its instructions. If you're using the Brightwell Florin Multi, this suggests like 6 drops, and it literally does mean drops, per day per 20 gallons. So in your tank, because you're roughly 30, you would need like 9 drops a day, and then I would dose that much every other day, but opposite. So if you're in, I know this is what it recommends, but because we're dosing an all-in-one, we don't want to overdose this on the same day. So what I would instead do is, if you're dosing Easy Green on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that's where I'm going to dose the Florin Multi, okay? Because we have a lot of micros and stuff already in Easy Green. We're just supplementing some extra micros in those days that we're not fertilizing. So we have this kind of consistent stream of nutrition available to our plants, but at a low level. We don't want to go crazy. We're trying to keep this kind of lean so that it doesn't boost the algae even further. Whatever your water change day is, make that the day that you either don't do any fertilizer or you only dose something like this, if that makes sense. So like let's say it's Sunday's your water change day, just to make it simple. So I want you Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Easy Green. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Brightwell Florin Multi or Flourish Trace, either one, whichever you're choosing. And then on Sunday, you're going to do your water change. Let's dial the water change up a little bit. Instead of 30%, I'd like to see 50. Why? I want to pull any excess nutrients out so that our nutrient base is what we're dosing. And we're not potentially dealing with any buildups of something that isn't getting heavily utilized. And that could be it could be something like iron. It could be one of the micros, something like that. I want to dilute those out so that it's basically what we're dosing every week, if that makes sense. The plants will consume a good amount of it, if not all of it. And then when we do a water change, it's kind of refreshing our water. It's refreshing a little bit of the natural mineral content that we're bringing in. And after that is done, we're going to dose those micros again. Okay? So we're gonna dilute it and then put a little bit of the micros in there as kind of a little kicker. And I think that change alone should see a level of success in the fertilizer regime as a whole. So let's recap. Once a month, we're going to root tab the whole tank. But we're going to kind of space it out. We'll have one specifically for the sword, and then you might have 6 wide or 5 wide, whatever makes sense. So just kind of a big pattern that's spread out to help add a little nutrition throughout the whole of the soil so that each plant has an opportunity to get some stuff from its roots a little bit more efficiently. Then we're going to change our liquid fertilizer, and instead of the amount, we're going to keep kind of the amount the same, but we're going to spread it out throughout the week every other day. 1 milliliter every other day. And then on the days that we're not dosing the Aquarium Co-op Easy Green, we're going to dose either Flourish Trace, Brightwell Florin Multi, or a similar all micros product. The only difference that I would suggest in the Florin Multi specifically is because I see some things that could be potassium related, and this is micros plus potassium. So this is where I think this product, if you have it, is probably the superior choice because it's going to give you the potassium, but you do have a potassium supplement, so you could use micros in Flourish Trace plus potassium, right, on those days that you're not dosing Easy Green. Once a week, we want to up that water change to about 50%. And I think from there, that fertilizer regime change should start giving us some positive momentum. And what we might find is we might actually need slightly more fertilizer than that. And that's something that we can kind of tackle as we start seeing things. So follow up with me, Carolyn, in say 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. It depends on when you start seeing some change. Now, if things are getting worse and worse and worse, get back to me faster, okay? But we'll kind of keep working on this. But I think the big thing is if we make that nutrition adjustment, we can probably keep the light almost exactly the same, but you might look at your other flexes and go, those look a little brighter. Let's brighten the light just a touch and put it up like 5%. Like I said, 5% on the white. I would leave the red and the green, just the white light. Just increase the white. That's our primary powerhouse in the aqua sky. So let's do it there. Just the white light is the only thing we're going to change. If we need to go down, if we need to go dimmer, then I want you to dim the red, green, and white, okay? just because they're a little higher. But if we were just increasing, I would say only increase the white. Make it simple. So that's our combination. Now, there's one other thing I would suggest, and this is to help with some of that spot algae that you're seeing like on your Anubias leaves and things like that. Either A, find a way to like move your Anubias and get them shaded by other plants, because a lot of what happens is that surface algae tends to grow when they're getting too much direct light, not something that actively cleans them. But two, you might consider getting either A, autosynclus, because they will clean and kind of continuously go over leaves, and they'll get a lot of that micro film and flora and fauna kind of stuff that we don't see with our eyes, but as it builds up, it can cause problems and feed that surface algae. Or two, look into some Amano shrimp. Most of the fish you have are not going to harm the shrimp, and shrimp do a phenomenal job of keeping like the surface of leaves really, really clean. You could also do this with something like nearite snails, just because they won't breed and you won't get a massive snail infestation. You will have to deal with the little white eggs every once in a while, so kind of pick your poison. Whatever is in your area, but I think Amano shrimp and snails both could work because you have a good amount of calcium in your water. Just remember that they will need some food beyond just what's in the tank. If you're feeding every day, you might consider like a little extra food every other day or something, or you might get a shrimp-specific food. I will give you an example. My good friend at Shrimpy Business makes something like this. There are lots of companies. Shrimp Envy has a phenomenal product. It's basically like, it looks like a Pocky stick if you're familiar with those. I'm very fortunate to know, even though I'm bad at keeping shrimp, I know several shrimp business owners who are all wonderful people. They have lots of wonderful things that they offer for shrimp keepers. This just happens to be the one I have on hand right now. But Shrimp Envy is also another wonderful company. So Shrimp Envy, Shrimpy Business, they both have phenomenal shrimp foods. You might have a local seller who does shrimp and has their own specialty stuff. Support your locals wherever you can. But if you need an online business, I'm a little biased. Shrimp Envy, Shrimpy Business, they're my friends. Maybe give them a little love. Thoughts? Anyway, I'll stop sipping for my friends. Look at one of those options, because often what happens is certain things build up on our leaves and that feeds the algae, and then once the algae really grows in, if you don't have something that's actively tackling the problem, it can be really hard to recover. And I've got some problems in a couple of my tanks right now, and I'm making things to do it, but like I have a tank, my guppy mansion, right? Or former guppy mansion, it's not really pure guppy mansion anymore. It's got a bunch of algae issues, but you know what one plant has no problems in there? The Anubias. Do you know why? It's because it's off on the side of the tank where there's almost no light. So it's getting very, very basically ambient light, which it doesn't need very much, but it's getting all the nutrients and stuff in the water. So it's as happy as can be. It's got big giant leaves. It looks pretty. Yeah. So that kind of stuff can happen. But if we can't shade the light naturally, what we can do is supplement with some creatures that won't impact your bioload really, but will help act as kind of the cleaning machines to help do some of that extra work. So that's it. I know this is a little bit longer one and a lot of details, but I think this is kind of the battle plan. So we're going to make some adjustments to the fertilizer. We're going to do a little bit larger water change. We probably can keep the light as is, but we might make a tiny change based on our other two flex tanks. And then we might consider adding either some autosynclus, some Amano shrimp, or some nearite snails to help keep the surfaces of all those plants a little cleaner and make sure that we can fight this algae from kind of a multi-pronged attack of small changes. And what I have found in my experience is that that multi-pronged attack of small changes goes a long distance. It's kind of the whole like, you know, you can, with a lot of effort, grow a great distance on your own, or with significantly less effort and more people, cover a great distance collaboratively. So let's do it in a collaborative fashion and get you toward long-term success. If you've enjoyed this video, if you learned something from this, or maybe you've got your own tip, leave it in the comment down below and like the video. It's two of the best ways to help old Papa YouTube say, hey, I like this, and someone else might too. It helps our channels grow, prevents all this sponsorship BS. You know how it is. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I do all sorts of Aquarium 911s. If you need my help, there are instructions in the description down below. Let me help you. Everything I need to get you into Aquarium 911. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.